I grew up on the Chesapeake Bay, so you'd think I'd be used to beach houses by now. Salt-stained siding, creaky decks, that damp wood smell. I've seen it all. But this place was different. My buddy Ray picked it up cheap at an auction a year ago, swore it was going to be his forever getaway. I don't know why he invited me to house sit while he was working overseas for a few months, but I couldn't say no. Free place to crash, walking distance from the water, no neighbors for at least 100 yards. Perfect, right? My own apartment lease was about to end, so the timing worked out. Ray handed me a single key and told me to watch out for leaks since the plumbing was old. That was it. Simple enough. When I pulled up, the place looked straight out of a time warp. 2 stories, battered gray siding, a sagging porch with weeds clawing up the steps. Honestly, it looked abandoned, the kind of place you'd expect to find squatters in. But inside it was surprisingly livable. Dusty, sure, but Ray had kept it stocked with the basics. Paper towels, canned food, even a half-broken TV. That first night, I slept in the upstairs bedroom. It was cold. One of those early spring nights where the wind still bites off the water. I remember lying there, half awake, listening to the waves rolling onto the shore and the old walls settling. I'm used to houses making noise, but something about this one felt different. The floors had a certain resonance. Every time I shifted, I swear it echoed, like a hollow drum beneath the floorboards. I figured it was just cheap construction and forgot about it. Over the next week, I settled into a routine. Wake up, make instant coffee, walk along the beach, then come back and pick away at freelance work on my laptop. In the evenings, I'd kill time playing guitar on the porch or trying to get the TV to work. There was no Wi-Fi, so I had a lot of time to think. That's when the weird stuff started. It was little things at first. Footsteps when I was sure I was alone. I'd be in the kitchen making eggs and hear something move upstairs, like a slow, deliberate shift. I'd go look, but nothing. Doors I'd left closed were open. Things went missing. A lighter I'd left on the counter, a spoon, my flashlight. I kept telling myself it was just me being paranoid. I mean, Ray had told me this place had issues and old houses are unpredictable, but one night changed everything. I was halfway through a lukewarm shower, scrubbing shampoo out of my hair, when the power went out. Total darkness, the water slowing to a trickle. I stood there for a second, water dripping down my back, so trying to orient myself. Then I heard it. A voice. It wasn't coming from inside the bathroom, but below it. Faint, muffled, echoing through the floorboards. I thought I was imagining it, but then it spoke again. A single word, so quiet I could barely make it out. Help! I froze. My hands started to tremble. I turned off the water, held my breath, and listened. There it was again, clearer this time and even closer. Help me. My mind raced. Who the hell could be down there? Was there a crawl space? A basement? I grabbed a towel, wrapped it around my waist, and carefully stepped into the pitch-black hallway. The emergency flashlight I kept in my backpack was missing. Of course it was. So I had to use my phone's weak flashlight instead. The floor was freezing under my bare feet as I crept down to the first floor, trying to locate the voice. Help! It said again, this time so loud I felt it in my chest. It was coming from under the floor. I scanned the floorboards with my phone light, looking for any hatch, any crawl space door. Nothing, just old oak boards nailed tight. But the voice kept coming, rhythmic, as if someone was trapped right under me, repeating the same word over and over. Help! 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 Every hair on my body stood on end. I should have run. I should have left the house and called the cops. But something made me stay. Maybe I was too terrified to move. Maybe it was some twisted curiosity. I don't know. I grabbed a hammer from Ray's tiny toolbox and started prying up the boards near where the voice was loudest. The nails squealed as I pulled them free. One by one, the planks came loose until I had a hole big enough to shine my light through. What I saw made my stomach drop. There was a crawl space after all, but it was deeper than any normal crawl space, almost like a hidden room beneath the house. And in the corner, hunched up against the concrete wall, was a man. He was so filthy I barely recognized him as human at first. more like a pile of rags. His skin was caked in grime, hair matted, eyes wide and wild. He shielded his face from my light like he hadn't seen brightness in years. How long have you been down there?" I croaked. He didn't answer. He just rocked back and forth, whispering help over and over. I should have left. I should have sealed the hole and called the police. But something in his voice, something so desperate, made me stay. "Can you stand up?" I asked. He looked at me with those hollow eyes, then slowly shook his head. I told him I'd call for help, but when I pulled out my phone, I realized there was no signal. Of course there wasn't. No Wi-Fi, no bars, nothing. I tried to reassure him I'd get help from town in the morning, but he didn't seem to hear me. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake on the couch listening to him down there. He didn't scream or cry or talk, just that steady rhythmic rocking, like a metronome in the dark. At sunrise, I grabbed my keys and drove into town as fast as I could. There was a tiny police station about 15 minutes inland. I told them everything, and I expected them to jump out of their chairs. But they just stared at me, blank-faced. The officer in charge said, "Under the floor? Are you sure?" I practically shouted, "Yes! There's a man under the house. Please, you have to come check." They agreed to send someone. When we got back, I showed them the hole I'd made, empty. The crawl space was there, sure, but no one was inside. Not even a trace. No footprints, no rags, nothing. Just bare dirt and concrete walls. I was losing my mind. I tried to explain what I'd seen, what I'd heard. The cop just shook his head and told me I'd been alone too long and maybe needed a break. They left after a quick look around, not even bothering to search the property. After they pulled out of the driveway, I was alone again. That night, I patched the floorboards back as best I could. I wanted to believe the police that I'd hallucinated the whole thing, but deep down, I knew what I'd seen, what I'd heard. I tried to sleep upstairs again, but around 2 a.m., I was jolted awake by a sound that made my blood run cold. Thump, thump, like someone crawling under the floorboards directly beneath my bed. Then that voice again, impossibly close, as if it was whispering straight into my ear through the mattress. "Help me." I leapt out of bed, grabbed my stuff, and ran out of that house in nothing but my sweatpants. I didn't look back. I drove through the night until I was back in the city, promising myself I'd never set foot there again. Ray tried to get me to come back a few weeks later, after he returned from his trip. I told him no way. I didn't even want to talk about what I'd seen. Sometimes in the quiet hours of the night, I still hear it. Help. 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 I don't know what or who was under those floorboards. But if you ever find yourself alone in a strange house and you hear a voice coming from beneath your feet, don't open it up, no matter how human it sounds.
This happened about a year ago, right at the end of summer. I'd taken a week off from work to recharge, and my cousin Lisa invited me to spend a few days at her parents' beach house on the Outer Banks in North Carolina. It was the kind of house you see in magazines' huge wraparound porch, floor-to-ceiling windows facing the ocean, a private dune path straight to the sand. They'd owned it for years, but hadn't had time to use it that summer, so it was sitting empty. Lisa was supposed to come down with me, but last-minute work stuff forced her to cancel. I'd already packed, already asked off, and honestly, I didn't want to waste the break. So I went alone, figuring a solo beach trip might be exactly what I needed to clear my head. The first couple days were great. I slept in, read on the deck, went for runs on the beach. It was so peaceful, it almost felt fake. Every night I fell asleep to the sound of the ocean, with just the faintest breeze rattling the window screens. But on the third night, something felt off. I'd stayed out on the deck later than usual, just enjoying the salty air, when I heard what sounded like footsteps coming from the side of the house. At first, I thought maybe it was one of the neighbors, or someone walking their dog along the beach access path. But the sound was steady, heavy, and too close. I turned off the porch light so I wouldn't be as visible, and I listened. I swear I heard someone moving through the side yard, right next to the bushes along the fence. There were no voices, no dog leash clinking, nothing, just slow, deliberate footsteps. I tried to convince myself it was a deer or even the wind moving something around, but my gut told me otherwise. Eventually, the sound stopped, and after 10 minutes of sitting frozen in the dark, I convinced myself I was being paranoid. I locked the doors and went to bed around 11 that night. I had the most vivid nightmare I've ever experienced. I dreamt I was lying in bed, unable to move, and there was a tall, faceless person standing in the corner of the room, swaying back and forth like they were struggling to keep upright. In the dream, I couldn't scream, couldn't move, couldn't even close my eyes. The thing in the corner just watched me. When I finally jolted awake, I was drenched in sweat. It was pitch black in the room, but I could still hear the ocean outside, calm and steady. I tried to tell myself it was just a nightmare, but there was this smell in the air, something sour and wet, like a dirty towel left in the sun too long. I got up, turned on the lights, checked every room. Nothing was out of place, no windows open, no doors unlocked. I chalked it up to stress and tried to go back to sleep, though I left a small lamp on. The next morning, I decided to get out of the house for a while. I packed up my things and went into town to grab breakfast and maybe wander around some shops. When I came back around noon, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. In the thin layer of sand on the back deck, there were footprints. They weren't mine. I'd been wearing shoes every time I stepped out there. These were larger, wider, and deeply imprinted, like someone had stood there for a while. My stomach flipped. I tried to reason it away, maybe an old print from a previous guest. But there had been a storm a few days earlier, and I'd cleaned the deck afterward. These were new. I decided to check the security cameras. There were a couple cheap ones set up around the house, connected to an old monitor in the hallway closet. I pulled up the overnight recording, fast-forwarding through hours of nothing but darkness and swaying dune grass. But around 2:15 a.m., I saw it. A person, tall and thin, walked across the back deck. They moved strangely, almost like they were injured, their shoulders jerking side to side as they limped along. They went right up to the sliding glass door and just stood there, facing inside, watching. For at least 10 minutes, they didn't move, didn't knock, didn't try the handle, just stood there. Then they turned and disappeared off camera. I felt like I was going to throw up. That was around the same time I'd woken up from that dream. I couldn't help but wonder if I'd somehow sensed them outside. I called Lisa in a panic. She told me to leave the house and wait somewhere safe while she phoned the local police. When the officers arrived, they did a sweep of the property and checked all the locks. They couldn't find anyone. Nothing had been broken, no signs of forced entry. They suggested maybe it was a lost tourist or someone drunk wandering the wrong way on the beach. But that didn't explain the way he moved or how he stood staring through the door for so long. Without trying to get in, I left that afternoon and never went back alone. Lisa's family eventually installed a new alarm system, but the thought of what could have happened if I hadn't locked the doors still makes me sick. I've stayed in plenty of beach houses since then, but I always double-check every window, every lock, and I never, ever sleep with the curtains open.
This happened about a year ago, right after I graduated college. Like a lot of people, I was stuck in that awkward gap between finishing school and starting a full-time job. My parents were letting me stay rent-free, which was amazing, but I felt like I was just wasting away in my childhood bedroom. I needed something to do, anything, really, to feel useful. That's when my aunt called and asked if I could look after her house while she was on a long overseas trip. It was a massive, modern place out near the Delaware shore, tucked into a quiet neighborhood, and I figured it'd be a nice change of pace. So I said yes. The place was gorgeous, with these huge windows overlooking the dunes and a wraparound porch, but it felt oddly empty without my family there. Usually, there'd be kids running around, board games scattered everywhere, that kind of chaos. But alone, it felt wrong. The first night was fine. I did a quick walkthrough to check on leaks, made sure the fridge wasn't rotting, then crashed. In the master bedroom on the second floor, it was one of those perfect summer nights, the kind where the ocean breeze drifts in through the screens. I actually slept great. The second night was different. I'd just finished brushing my teeth and was climbing into bed when I heard a faint scraping sound from the third floor, the attic level. At first, I thought I'd imagined it, but then I heard it again. A slow, deliberate drag, like someone was pulling something heavy across the floor. My heart jumped, but I tried to stay calm. Maybe it was the house settling. Old beach houses make weird noises, right? That's what I told myself. But it didn't stop. A minute later, I heard footsteps above me. Clear, heavy steps, crossing from one side of the attic to the other. I froze in bed, straining to listen. They stopped directly above my head. That's when the smell hit me. It was this rank, rotting odor that reminded me of damp laundry mixed with spoiled food. It made me gag. I didn't sleep that night. In the morning, I worked up the nerve to go upstairs. The third floor was supposed to be an empty storage space, mostly unused. I crept up the narrow staircase, the smell growing stronger with each step. When I reached the landing, I pushed open the door and nearly passed out. The room was trashed. Boxes overturned, insulation ripped from the walls, broken glass everywhere, and in the far corner, half hidden behind a busted dresser, was a dirty sleeping bag and a pile of food wrappers. Someone had been living there. My stomach turned. I ran back downstairs and called the police. They searched the whole house, top to bottom, but found no one. According to them, whoever had been squatting there must have left before I went up to check. They took my statement, warned me to be careful, and left. I tried to act normal after that. I locked every door and window, kept the lights on, and even started sleeping with a baseball bat next to the bed. It worked for a couple of nights. Then, a few days later, I woke up to something cold brushing my face. I shot upright in bed and saw a figure standing at the foot of the mattress. It was a man, filthy, bald, in ragged clothes. His skin was pale and greasy. His eyes sunk deep into his skull. He didn't say a word. He just stared. I couldn't move. I couldn't even scream. He stood there for what felt like a year, then turned and walked silently out of the room. I heard the stairs creak as he climbed up to the third floor. My paralysis broke. I grabbed my phone, called 911, and told them someone was inside the house again. The police showed up in minutes. I let them in and pointed straight to the attic staircase. They went up there, weapons drawn, and I heard a scuffle. They dragged him down in cuffs. That same filthy man, he'd been hiding in the walls, literally inside the walls. There was a hole behind one of the dressers that led into the crawl space, and he'd been living there, listening to me move around the house. Coming out only at night, that I still get chills thinking about it. When they questioned him, he wouldn't say a word. Not how he got in, not how long he'd been there, nothing. Just stared through them like they didn't exist. After that, I moved back home, and my aunt paid to have the entire place renovated, every inch sealed and secured. But I can't shake the feeling that if I hadn't woken up that night, I might never have woken up at all.